Hey everybody. So I was just sort of driving along and I saw some place with some lights on, so I figured I would jump live. I had an idea of something to talk to you guys about, and this seemed like a good opportunity. So I want to talk to you about books. Let's talk about the books that influenced you when you were younger. For instance, we can talk about the classics, and we will. And by younger, I mean not necessarily 5 or 6, though if you want to talk about a kid's book, that's fine with me. But I'm thinking about more the stuff that maybe as a young teenager affected you or changed your worldview. Fiction or non, I think fiction books can be incredibly powerful. I think that one of the things that people misconstrue is that the idea of fiction is necessarily the fantasy component that makes the difference, but that's not really it at all. The thing is fiction gives us archetypes. It gives us models for the way that people can be. It's sort of that classic Ayn Rand idea of what romanticism can be at its best. The idea that romance novels or the romantic literature tradition is not necessarily about love, but necessarily about larger than life things happening. Now I'm no literature major, so that's not necessarily probably strictly accurate, but you get the point. We're going to do a couple of these, and we're going to talk about different books. But I figured I would start with an easy one, and that is a fairly obvious one, the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. What did I take away from Foundation? There's a lot to take away in the sense of there are some interesting characters and yada, yada, yada. But what really got me about Foundation, the thing that sort of changed the way my life would go from there, was the idea that humans in groups act in ways that can be managed and to a degree predicted. It wouldn't be until much, much later in my life that I would learn about chaotic systems and why you can never completely predict humans, even in large enough groups as Asimov believed. Asimov believed that with enough information and enough people that the variations would even out and that they would act in predictable ways. But I think it's pretty clear that humans are a chaotic network, and that even if it would make perfect sense for them all to act in a particular way, or even if their irrationalities were predictable, that it's still completely possible for an idea to take hold and spread in a sort of self-reinforcing viral way. And we see this in social media, which is really connecting us. I'm having a real hard time figuring out exactly where to... Like, I have to look at the screen over here to see what I'm seeing, but then I got to look over there, you know? Yes. All right, I get you. All right. Romance novels and are all about cheap porn. No, but that's not true. That's romance novels. That's Harlequin romance silliness. I'm talking about romantic literature tradition. There's a lot of them that don't quite fit into that. Heck, one can make a decent case that on some level, The Lord of the Rings it fits as well into the romantic tradition as it does fantasy. And that's kind of what I mean about that. In any case, so Asimov's Foundation gave me the idea that human beings could be modeled in a group. And while it's an imperfect theory, like a lot of the stuff Asimov had and the understanding of his time, it still really changed the way I looked at things. And it changes the way I approach media, and it changes the way communication. And I think as we got more and more into social media and the idea of memes became more common, that's all right. I've read my share of trashy Harlequin romance, whatever. Not really Harlequin, but you know what I mean. But in any case, so I think Asimov kind of had it right. What I took away from the Foundation novels was that idea that you can manage human actions in a large scale. So that's sort of what I took away from one of those. You know, we can, in another video, we'll talk about Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, I think, gave me a lot of my views of masculinity and manhood. It wasn't until a little later in my life that I read some of the classic Japanese samurai novels, samurai works that sort of reinforce that. But, you know, it's very interesting when you see the sort of things that they spoke about with Aragorn and the Fellowship, and then the way even you get like the Merry and Pippin thing, and their thoughts about whether or not to join up with different groups and armies. And there's a lot of the samurai tradition, because there's a lot of the warrior romanticism tradition that sort of goes along with all of that. But in any case, we'll do a whole Lord of the Rings one. So we have Lord of the Rings to worry about, not necessarily so much The Hobbit, though it was a very influential book to me from a sense of fun and literature. It didn't shape me the way Lord of the Rings did. And of course, we have some obscure ones. Armor, a book by a guy named John Steakley, sort of changed everything about the way I approach fighting, combat. It comes to me often in a martial arts context as much as the more esoteric samurai stuff does in its own way. It's an interesting sell. Why can't a movie just be a movie? I mean, are Bert and Ernie gay? Who started that? Well, hey, look, two guys living alone. One of them obviously has testosterone problems because he's losing his hair. Sort of a father figure to a much younger character, a more naive character. I don't know. I don't think it's that much of a stretch. But hey, what do I know? People will write slash fiction about almost anything. I came across on the internet the other day that there's apparently a whole bunch of slash fiction about Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which I would have thought was a almost impossible TV show to make dirty, but somebody managed. So, okay, fair enough. Anyway, so there we go. That's the first novel that I'm going to throw out there. I'm going to throw out Foundation. We'll do Lord of the Rings later. We'll do Armor by John Steakley another time. Obviously, there's Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged go in that list. Illusions probably has something to say in there. There are more. I can think of maybe 3 or 4 others that had a large and profound effect. I think obviously Starship Troopers would be one of those. Yeah, I'd go with Starship Troopers, maybe 1 or 2 others. Anyway, go ahead and put down in the comments some book that might have influenced you, or better yet, if you have any kind of brass stones at all. If you're watching this, you're watching it on Facebook with all likelihood, and you can just hit that live button and go ahead and do a video of your own. Tell me what book influenced you as a kid, or a number of books that influenced you as a teenager, or even as a young adult. I'm very interested. All right, folks, we will talk more later. I have to go write a whole bunch of code, and as you can tell, I'm walking around in circles, and it is super chilly out here. Take it easy. Enjoy. I'll talk to you later.